Death is forever. But what about grave sites? Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and you are listening to Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. This is lesson 543, so you can find the full lesson at plainenglish.com/543. I always like to think of topics that have new vocabulary for you, and I think I've got one today. What happens when a cemetery runs out of space? We'll talk about how different countries handle space shortage now that most of humanity lives in a city where there isn't a lot of extra burial space around. Later in the lesson, we'll talk about a new way to use the word short, and JR has selected an English song of the week for us to listen to. Let's get started. Eight billion humans are alive today. A recent study attempted to calculate the total number of Homo sapiens ever to have lived, spanning about 192,000 years. The number they came up with? 109 billion. The total population of Earth for all time, the total number of humans who have ever lived and died, is 109 billion. And that means that 7% of all the Homo sapiens ever to have lived are alive today. The number is an estimate, but one thing is for sure: we won't live forever, and a lot of humans will want to be buried. That's a problem for the world's cemeteries, many of which are running out of land. Finding vacant land on Earth is not the problem. One study showed that between 2024 and 2042, 76 million Americans will die. To bury them all, you'd need a graveyard the size of Las Vegas. That's big, for sure, but we could find the space in a continent-sized country. The problem is space where people want it. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people in the world lived in rural areas. In countries with a Christian tradition, the most common option was to be buried at a small church graveyard or a small family graveyard near a farm. This worked well with a smaller population distributed across a vast area. But now, about 56% of all people alive live in urban areas, cities, in other words. But even that masks big differences around the world. Over 80% of Latin Americans live in cities. And people in cities want to be buried near where they live, where their family and friends can visit their grave sites. But understandably, cities prioritize the comfort of the living, and many big city cemeteries are running out of space. So what can be done? In London, several cemeteries are simply full. They are not accepting new burials. Families may have to bury loved ones farther from their homes, an inconvenience for them, but it's also bad for the cemeteries themselves. Cemeteries rely on income from new burials to maintain the grounds of the existing grave sites. Without new burials, that money dries up. One option is to expand, but that's easier said than done. In dense London, there is no neighboring land. In suburban areas, cemeteries can purchase adjacent or nearby lots for expansion, but neighbors often object. A lot of homeowners say they don't want to live next to dead people, so they veto cemetery expansions. Cremation is an obvious answer, and about 3/4 of British and Australian residents opt for cremation. Rates are lower in religious America, Spain, Poland, and Italy. That option, though, is very popular in Asia, where Buddhism allows for cremation. But whereas Americans and Europeans often scatter the ashes of their loved ones, Buddhists preserve and visit the cremated remains of their ancestors. That doesn't solve the problem of burial space, it just changes it. In crowded Hong Kong, residents can opt to be cremated and to have their ashes stored in an urn and displayed in a public burial niche, like a resting place for ashes. However, space is so short that there's a 5-year waiting list. Upon cremation, remains are stored out of sight. Only after reaching the top of the waiting list can they be displayed in a public niche. Technology can help too. In Singapore, families can store urns in a large underground vault. To visit relatives, they swipe a key card. A mechanized system retrieves the urns, and the family can have a visitation. Many religious traditions, however, don't allow for cremation. One such tradition is Judaism. In Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, the main cemetery is running out of space. So they're going deep underground. With funds from a wealthy donor, the cemetery built an elaborate tunnel system deep underground to house an additional 22,000 graves arranged vertically. Family members can walk down on ramps or take an elevator deep below ground. Platforms allow residents to see grave sites at various levels in the underground cemetery. It's the first of its kind. Catholicism allows for cremation in only limited circumstances, and some people, regardless of religious tradition, will simply prefer it. So that brings us to a new old idea: grave recycling. Here is why I'm calling it a new old idea. Centuries ago, as cities developed, people didn't respect grave sites like we do today. Just ask the 500,000 people who visit the Paris catacombs every year. Mass burial sites, grave recycling, moving human remains, stacking bodies. This all happened long, long ago. Happily, the idea of grave recycling today is much more delicate. The idea is called lift and deepen. After a body has been in the ground for a long time, the cemetery can reopen the grave, dig the grave deeper, and move the existing remains deeper underground. Then they place a new casket on the same site closer to the surface. In one state in Australia, they crush the gravestone and replace it with a new one. In London, they simply flip the gravestone around and create a new inscription on the flat side. How much time passes before this happens? It can vary, but it's between 50 and 100 years. In the state of South Australia, a grave site carries internment rights of between 50 and 99 years. When that expires, families can opt to extend the rights if they want. If the family cannot be reached, the cemetery places a note on the gravestone and waits 2 years. If after 2 years nobody has come forward to extend the rights, then they perform the lift and deepen procedure. The remains stay in the same grave site, but a new casket goes on top. In London, the waiting period is 75 years, and reuse in London Cemetery is optional. After 75 years, a notice is published and a marker is placed on the gravestone. Family members can request that their loved ones' grave sites not be recycled, and the cemetery will respect their wishes. Even so, the cemeteries predict that grave recycling will allow them to operate in perpetuity. So finally, we have a cemetery plan that's as permanent as death itself. There are options other than cremation and burial. Actually, the other options are variations on the themes of cremation and burial. You can turn the cremated remains of a loved one into a diamond. This is true. JR told me about it. A process separates the pure carbon from cremated remains, and that carbon is then turned into a lab-grown diamond. And as we learned from an old advertising campaign, diamonds are forever. But this is still cremation, and some people won't go for that. So here's another option. You can opt for your remains to be packed into a biodegradable bag and buried. Then they'll plant a tree on top. As the remains decay, they release nutrients into the soil, and that fertilizes the tree. I like this option the best. I have never thought that I, as one person who lives for one small time in history, I have never thought that I can lay claim to a piece of the Earth's surface forever. But the world will always need new trees, and you can put a nice plaque on a tree. So I think I would go for the tree pod burial option. Today, I'm going to show you one way to use the expression to be short. I'm not talking about my own personal stature. Actually, since moving to Mexico, I've gone from being slightly below average height in the US to being slightly above average height here. So I'm feeling pretty tall right now. I'm going to show you a different way to use this. We can use the phrase to be short when talking about something that is scarce, something that is limited in quantity. And if something is short, you don't have enough of it. Time, money, and space are three things that can be short. You heard it today in the context of space. Space is short in London's cemeteries. That means space is scarce. There isn't a lot of it. In fact, there isn't enough of it. How often do you order meals from delivery apps? I don't do that very often. The extra fees tend to add up. But when time is short, I do sometimes order from the apps. When time is short, when I don't have enough time to do everything I need to do. When I'm on my way home, it's already 8:30 at night, I don't have anything prepared, time is short. That's when I might order from a delivery app. For me, that's maybe once every 2 weeks. I do it only when time is short and I don't have anything ready at home. YouTube is experimenting with free ad-supported streaming channels. If you don't subscribe to pay television, you probably have streaming services like HBO Max and Netflix, but those require you to pick and choose what to watch. And crucially, you have to pay. Some people like the old television model of flipping through the channels to see what's on. Not me, but some people like it. So YouTube is creating some channels with content playing 24 hours a day. And people can flip through the channels just like on their old cable plan. These channels include ads and they will be free. Anyway, I read an article saying that when money is short, free is a good price for an entertainment option. A lot of people think the world is heading for a recession. We've had a couple of years of high inflation, and the bills for monthly services add up. So for many people, money is short. And if money is short, then it's nice to have another streaming or entertainment option that you don't have to pay for. When I lived in New York, I knew people who would share one-bedroom apartments. They would be professionals, college graduates with good jobs paying $50,000 or $75,000 per year, and they would share a one-bedroom apartment. They would hang a sheet down the middle of the one bedroom. These are unrelated people, not dating. They'd hang a sheet or even build a temporary wall in the middle of the one single bedroom and put a bed on either side. Why? Living space in New York is short. There's just not enough of it for the people who want to live there. So the prices are high, and the simple lack of availability causes people to do some crazy things. When space is short, you have to make compromises. So those are some examples with time, space, and money being short. Time is short. Space is short. Money is short. It all means there is not enough of it. So those are the most common words to use with short in this sense. It's less common, but you can say your patience is short. You might say this to your kids. My patience is short today, so I need you to be on your best behavior. In a sports context, if you throw or kick a ball and it doesn't go far enough, you can use short. In American football, if a player attempts a long field goal and it doesn't quite reach the crossbar, you can say the kick was short. So those are a few more examples, but the most common would be time, space, and money. Today's song of the week is You Should Probably Leave by Chris Stapleton. It's about, how shall I put this? Resisting temptation. It's a good sound, like a southern country sound. You Should Probably Leave by Chris Stapleton is the song of the week. Now, if you're a Plus member, then you can find this page on the website. You get there by going to plainenglish.com/543. And below this page, with the expression, is a practice area where you can write your own examples with the word short. And I will give you personal feedback. And the space for this is not short, it's unlimited. And this is a great advantage of the Plus membership. Underneath everything you learn, the videos and the expressions, is the chance to practice it in writing and get individual feedback from me. One of the ways I start my day is to look at all the great examples that Plus members have written below the video and expression lessons on the website. So if you're a Plus member, you get that at plainenglish.com/543 and under every single expression and video on the website. Now, if you're not yet a Plus member, this is one of the great benefits to consider. You learn a new word, you think you understand it, you want to try to use it in real life, but you don't want to do it wrong. That's why we have this feature. You practice with us, you get it right with us, and then you'll get it right in the real world. Now, if that sounds like something that can help you, then come visit us at plainenglish.com/plus, PLUS, and sign up today. We'll be back next Monday with a new lesson as always. See you then.